All right, everyone. Got to beat your fantasy opponent, and you got to beat the waiver wire right now on FFT Express. And welcome, everybody. It is time to beat the waiver wire. Hey, all right. Yeah, keep it going.
You actually did it.
Keep it going for Dave Richard, folks. All right, Dave, bye week start next week. Uh-oh.
No. It's the Falcons. It's the Bears. It's the Packers. It's the Steelers. They're all on bye. So there are some players that you can actually cut now if you're not using them. I looked to see who was rostered in a decent amount of leagues. Michael Penix and Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Kyle Monangai at running back. A lot of receivers, Adam. Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Calvin Austin, Luther Burden. In shallow leagues, Darnell Mooney. These are all players that you can cut. Here's a couple of tight ends: Colson Loveland, Jonnu Smith, and even in the shallowest of leagues, Kyle Pitts. I'm not saying you have to cut these guys, but if you want to try and use that roster spot for someone who might break out in week 4 or week 5, these are the types of players you can move on from. You could always double back and get them before week 5 because no one's going to pick them up because they're not playing in week 5.
That's true. Would you pick up Tyler Algier if someone dropped him?
Probably not unless I had Bijan Robinson. I would make that move. And we'll talk about those types of handcuffs later. It's really like a sentence for later in the video. We should probably also mention a couple of DSTs.
Sure.
Yeah. Obviously, if the Falcons and the Packers or the Steelers and the Packers aren't playing, you can't use them in week 5. Falcons, Steelers, cut them. I don't think you're cutting the Packers. I wouldn't want to cut the Packers. And that means it's time to go get one for that following week. The Colts are 75% available. They're against Las Vegas. Vegas, through the first 3 weeks of the season, has allowed at least 10 fantasy points to each DST that they faced. And then they play Arizona after that. So you might be able to use the Colts for 2 weeks. The Cardinals defense, we can go back to them. Don't use them. You're going to have to pick them up before Thursday. But the Cardinals DST, they've got Tennessee in week number 5. Tennessee's allowed 13 fantasy points to each of the first 3 defenses that they faced. The Giants, the Jets, not sure I'm really in love with picking them up, but those are more desperation options if you want those alternatives. And one more DST you can cut, and this is kind of bold, but the Texans, I don't think you should do it because they've got a great matchup in week 4, but week 5, they're against Baltimore. I don't think you're going to use them then, and then week 6, they're on bye.
Interesting point. Okay. All right, so how about quarterbacks, or if you want to maybe just start with one headliner for beating the waiver wire and then transition to the quarterbacks, but what do we got?
Sure. Well, why don't we start with tight ends, because the headliner for me is Oronde Gadsden, the second with the Chargers. 95% available. We know he's going to play more. I don't mind his matchup this week against the Giants. Then he's got the Commanders in week 5, the Dolphins in week 6. It's a 3-week runway for Gadsden, who can certainly see more play. He could certainly see more routes. I could talk one of these days, see more routes, get more targets. This is a great offense in LA. Gadsden's a name that I'm interested in. And I'm much less interested in Darren Waller, but he's expected to play sooner or later. He's got the Jets in week 4. That's a tough matchup. Week 5, the Dolphins are at the Panthers. That's a matchup that could be good if Waller's good in week number 4. Those are 2 names to look at. Other ones with week 4 matchups that you might consider. There's really only one. It's Harold Fannin, 46% available. He's against the Lions.
Okay. Yeah, Gadsden is so intriguing because, man, if they start throwing to him, then it's going to be like a better version of the Browns, right? Where it's just so spread out, and
sure,
you may not have enough, right? I mean, we can't have that. I'm sorry, Dave. We cannot have that. It's too many mouths to feed.
It's just more people taking targets away from Ladd McConkey. And as long as we're okay with that, then everything will be just fine. But no, I've been watching a lot of Chargers film today. Gadsden does stand out as somebody who can win one-on-one matchups against linebackers and could be a good short area option, could be a guy that Herbert leans on when he's pressured. And his offensive line, especially against Denver, did allow a lot of pressure. But enough about Gadsden. He's somebody that I absolutely would try and stash. Let's talk quarterbacks. And you can't use Caleb Williams or Jordan Love in week 5. Or if you want an alternative to Drake May, who's got the Bills, Baker Mayfield, who's got the Seahawks, Bo Nix, who's got the Eagles, or Brock Purdy, who's against the Rams. He's only had one good career game against the Rams. Take a look at Bryce Young, 69% available, taking on the Dolphins. Dolphins have allowed the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks through the young seasons, and it's at least 28 fantasy points that they have allowed. It's a pretty good reason to start a Jets quarterback this week as well. And then Jackson Dart is worth stashing. He's got the Saints in week number 5. They've allowed at least 20 fantasy points to every quarterback that they've taken on, and he's available in 55% of leagues. Those are the 2 quarterbacks that I would target first and foremost. Sam Darnold, Matthew Stafford, 2 other ones that you could go after.
Okay. Yeah. Bryce Young and that Jackson, that Saints Giants game is just kind of an interesting one for beat the waiver wire purposes. Could you maybe think about a DST in that game? Would you go so far as Spencer Rattler? I hope not.
I hope not for Rattler, and the Giants would be my preferred option.
But you still have guys like Rashid Shaheed and Wan'Dale Robinson who have a little bit of availability, 2 receiver leagues. You could probably get one of those guys. So they're not the worst options. All right, we're going to take some breaks. Just one break, actually.
Let's take 6 breaks, Adam. 6 breaks starting now.
We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about running backs and wide receivers to add right now before it's too late on FFT Express. Okay, that was the worst transition into a break
We
ever.
have really been tripping over our words on this show.
Yeah. Well, we're just having so much fun, Dave.
I love it. I love doing this. And here's the thing. There aren't a lot of people who think about beating the waiver wire. They're just playing fantasy and going through the motions. It's the people like you, me, and whoever's watching. We're a step ahead. We're those chess masters here.
Yeah, I got one league where I have Jordan Love, and I'm actually looking at the waiver wire right now. If you're on CBS, you can sort by week 5 projections. And I want to badly pick up Bryce Young, but I don't really want to drop anyone. So I don't think I'm going to do it now, because you also have to look at, are there other quarterbacks that are halfway decent on the waiver wire? And I think I could probably get by if I don't get Bryce Young next week. But all right, anyway, back to all of you. So I'm just saying that's another thing, is you just have to, if you're going to have to drop someone to beat the waiver wire, take a look at the waiver wire at quarterback especially and see if there are other options. And if there are other options, then you don't have to be so desperate. Okay.
Sure.
Dave,
Same
running
thing with tight
backs?
ends.
Yeah. Running backs, what do you got?
Woody Marks is the headliner there. He's available in 50% of leagues. It's starting to feel like it's just a matter of time before he overtakes Nick Chubb as the better running back in Houston. I don't know if that necessarily means that he's going to be great for fantasy. Texans have a lot of problems, and it starts with their offensive line. But at least he's a younger running back, versatile, can catch the ball a little bit. They're running out of options there, and they need some wins. So I wonder if Woody Marks ends up getting some opportunities. And then we've been banging the drum for Tyjae Spears pretty much since he went on IR, because we've told people you can take him with your last pick, shove him in an IR locker, and just wait for him to come back. The latest report out of Tennessee is that he's been spotted without his walking boot and without a scooter. So maybe he's getting closer. And it's just like Houston. Tennessee's offense isn't anything to write home about, but Tony Pollard hasn't been amazing. I do think that offensive line does have potential to be good. And Tyjae Spears is a versatile running back. So kind of like Woody Marks in that regard, he's somebody that you can go and stash, especially if you can put him in an IR spot for one more week. And then once he's out off of IR, you can go ahead and potentially use him as a bye week replacement, as a flex, and maybe his role grows a little bit and he starts to kind of nail that ceiling that we thought he's had ever since he came into the league. 2 more running backs, and then just kind of like a PSA at the position. The Commanders running backs, Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, both available largely, 70% of leagues. They're out there. They're not amazing. McNichols is the 3rd down guy. Rodriguez will work on 1st and 2nd down. Krosky Merritt is not at 100%. I believe he practiced on Thursday, but we know that it's a 3-way split. At bare minimum, you could have a running back who could fall into a decent role sooner than later just because of how things are going in Washington. It's not like Krosky Merritt is setting the world on fire. And then Blake Corum is the 5th name, 44% available. And he's the poster boy to remind everybody that it's okay to grab your best running back's handcuff as long as that handcuff is good. Corum behind Kyron Williams. We've seen him already do some nice things. If Kyron Williams goes down, Blake Corum will see more work. Tyler Algier, you brought him up earlier in this video. If he were available and you've got Bijan Robinson, of course you'd want to have him there because he has not been bad when Bijan Robinson either hasn't played or wasn't a Falcon. We saw that from Tyler Algier a couple of years ago. So you can do that now before your backup becomes the next Trey Benson and everybody's running to the waiver wire to pick him up, and it's not you who gets him.
2 more names that Dave has said previously, but not today. Devin Singletary, 4% rostered as the RB2. And then if you're looking at a team that has gotten nothing out of their running backs and has a young, speedy guy that they might want to get in there, Brashard Smith for the Chiefs.
The
Wide
one thing I'll say about Brashard Smith is Chris Collinsworth mentioned on the broadcast last Sunday night that he tried to get Andy Reid to talk about Brashard Smith in their production meetings. And Reid really seemed to caution that they didn't want to overuse him. So I'd be surprised if he ended up becoming a 60% of the snap guy for Kansas City.
All right, let's talk about wide receivers to stash.
I've got some interesting names here too. Obviously, the favorite is going to be Elic Ayomanor. He's available in 53% of leagues. Tough matchup this week against Houston. He's got Arizona and Las Vegas in the weeks that follow. Could end up being the best receiver for the Titans this season. Don't hate the idea of grabbing him, putting him on your bench. You're going to need him to be a bye week replacement along the way. And I like Torrey Horton's future in Seattle. We know that JSN is going to be the main guy, but it looks like Cooper Kupp is just over the hill at this point. There isn't a tight end that really looks good. I think Torrey Horton could end up being number 2 in that team in targets. And I like what we've gotten from him, 71% route rate in weeks 1 and 3. And he's not just a deep threat, Adam. His ADOT was 7.5 yards last week. And he's shown flashes of speed and good hands since the preseason. Available in 76% of leagues, that's Torrey Horton. Other wide receivers, I mentioned him last week, Troy Franklin. He's very good, available in 52% of leagues. 88% route rate each of the last 2 games for Denver. I wonder if he starts to see a little bit more of an opportunity. I think that he's someone, if you picked him up last week and he's still on your team, hang on to him for at least one more week. Parker Washington in Jacksonville, 97% available. He might be the only wide receiver that you can grab off the waiver wire from this list. 11 targets last week, season high 74% route rate. That number can go up. I think that he could end up being a very good complementary option for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then last but not least, we've talked about him a bunch. Here we go again. The Tyjae Spears of wide receivers, Jalen Coker, 88% available. He's an IR stash. It doesn't sound promising that he's going to rush right back to the lineup for the Panthers as soon as he's available. That would be week 5, but we'll see. And as long as he's sidelined and he's on IR, you can just keep him in IR and just let him sit on the bench. And then when he's available to play, I think he's going to have a good role for the Carolina Panthers.
Thank you, Dave Richard. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to Fantasy Football Today Express. In case you didn't see the news, big news today, Brandon Ayuk is not close to returning, so that's not someone you need to stash, especially if you don't have if you have an IR spot, whatever. But he's not going to be back anytime soon, so cross him off then. We'll be back tomorrow with Fantasy Football Today, start or sit for the NFC home game. See ya.